Hello, nerds and nerdettes, and welcome back to the channel once again. We are now into January, which means December came to an end, which only means one thing here on this channel, which is that it is haul time. This video, I will be going over everything that I picked up during the month of December. A quick disclaimer, this is a pretty large haul, but keep in mind, we had the holidays there, so this is not my usual size of haul. So just be aware that this is going to be a little bit of a longer video because I did receive a decent amount of books, manga, indie, and big two titles, everything under the umbrella of comic book. So just be aware of that. Also, I know in a lot of videos as of recently, I've been referencing a update as far as the channel, so I might as well go ahead and get right into it. So I am, me personally, going to be moving. It is going to be a very large move for me and my family. We are moving into another state and not a close state. It's going to be a very long haul for me and the missus and our household, our 3 dogs included. So obviously because of that, the uploads and the activity on the channel and my social medias are not going to be on par with what they typically are. The 3 videos a week probably is not going to continue until further notice, just because I'm going to be packing, moving, driving across states to establish my new home. So just a quick update there. I do apologize for that. I am so thankful for the year that we have had, the reactions and the support and love from our community throughout this year of doing YouTube pretty consistently. And if I had it my way, I would be able to do the move and upload, but obviously that's a lot to kind of handle along with my day-to-day job and life that happens. So I do apologize for that, and I do want to thank you guys once again for just being a part of this community, all of the friends that I've made, from Ben to Havoc to Gary, Omni Nation, all of the organic price book jabronis, from Jake at Brave and the Bold to Omnidog at Omnidog, the YouTube channel, Omar at Nearman Condition, all of the comic book YouTubers that I've kind of become friendly with and united with. So thank you to everyone that has been a part of this journey. But enough rambling and talking about this inevitable move that I am definitely dreading a little bit, but still, we gotta do what we gotta do. But let's go ahead and jump into the haul. Again, this is going to be a big one. This is going to be a little bit of a longer video, so apologies for that also. But for those of you that are new around here, we do start with manga, work our way into indies and smaller publishers, and then we do wrap up the video with the big two, typically starting with DC or Marvel and then finishing what we didn't touch on. So just a quick update there and the breakdown of how this haul is going to go per usual. But let's go ahead and jump into the haul, starting with, like I said, manga. First up for manga is Soul Eater, the Perfect Edition, volumes 11 and 12. These honestly have made it into the collection purely because they are beautiful books. They are absolutely incredible hardcovers, beautiful, vibrant spines, and very glossy and beautiful paper quality also. I've only watched the anime of Soul Eater. I have not read Soul Eater, but here we are still collecting it purely because of the beautifulness, if that's a word, of the books. I am planning on reading it. I'm planning on reading all of the manga that I haven't read yet. It's just a matter of time until I get to it, but still, continuing with this series, 11 and 12 of Soul Eater in the Perfect Editions. Next up is a manga title that I have been reading, which is Tokyo Revengers in the 2-in-1 editions here. This is 11 and 12 and 13 and 14. These are, I want to say, 2 volumes from the recent volume that came out. This did make it into my top 10 reads of 2023. That's how much I've enjoyed this manga. This is a time-traveling crime gang style of story, and if those genres sound very weird to kind of be paired together, that's because it is weird. but somehow it works beautifully. It is such an incredible story with awesome and tragic story elements and characters, a lot of relatability for me as a reader, so it's definitely a title that I'm going to keep on collecting, even though it seems like there's going to be 100 of these at this point, and it's going to take up my entire shelf, but that's the name of the game at this point. These do have, they are continuing the glossy kind of matte texture to these rather than the textured texture of the previous volumes, which I've grown accustomed to. I did like the texture, but now I'm just used to this smooth gloss finish to the cover, so I'm not mad about it, but I do love this series, and I do recommend this to all of my manga fans, comic fans. Check it out. It is some really, really good stuff. Next up is Parasite in the full color edition hardcovers. These are the ones that have Parasite that's going to be spelled out on the spines. All of them seem to be different shades of red, which is pretty interesting and cool because a lot of manga volumes do the different color kind of spines and covers. This is sticking to the same color palette, but just doing variations of it, which I think is pretty different. The connecting spines is obviously a selling point for me, and the fact that this is going to be Parasite released completely in full color also. So definitely some pretty good stuff here. This is a alien invasion style of story that's very brutal. You have a lot of action, a lot of blood and gore, a lot of horror elements. It is a little bit of a classical manga. It does have a classic manga art style and kind of pacing. So if that's not your thing, then you might not enjoy this, but still, it is incredible. I did review volume 1 of this if you want to see the build of the book and the paper quality and everything along those terms, but manga being released in full color is so cool. It's so rare, and Parasite is just one of those acclaimed and legendary titles in the manga sphere. So definitely worth picking up, especially for these connecting spines, which I'm a sucker for. I don't know why, but that does wrap up this book, so let's jump to the next manga title. Next up is The Girl from the Other Side, Volume 4. These are the deluxe editions. Absolutely beautiful books, beautiful volumes. They're very Bible-like. They are hardcovers. They have beautiful page quality. I haven't jumped into this yet. I know I keep promising, but obviously now with this move, it's going to be a little bit of a struggle to jump into a lot of titles, but I'm going to do my best to get as much reading under my belt during this hiatus of sorts. The missus off camera said it sounds like that I may not be coming back. I do plan to come back, so I'm sorry if I made it sound that way, but this is a good title. I know that was kind of random, but I want to touch on that. This is a great title, great book. I heard it is very touching, and the way that this content is treated is it has to be picked up. It's just so Bible-like. That's the only way I can describe it, with the gold embroidering when it comes to lettering and everything like that. So very pumped to get into this. Beautiful spines also. I don't know if I touched on that, but beautiful book. Definitely excited to finally get into it. Next up is Sullivan by Inio Asano, the legendary mangaka that he is. Sorry if I'm covering that title there. This is an all-in-one. You don't need to read anything else if you get this volume, but it is a coming-of-age story. There is some musical elements to the story also. It is a touching story, extremely touching. I've heard this has pushed people to tears, and it is one of those that can be very developmental if you read it at the right time in your life. So definitely worth checking out. There's a lesson in here. There's some touching aspects, touching story elements, incredible character development. Definitely worth the read, and it's not shocking to say because Inio Asano is literally a legendary mangaka. So definitely pick this up. I think this is out of print for a pretty decent time, if I'm remembering correctly, but I found this just kind of sitting at Barnes & Noble, so I think there was a reprint or a restock of sorts, so definitely happy to finally have it in the manga library. Next up is technically not a manga, but I'm putting it in this section of the video because it's manga-esque or manga enough in my definition, which is Afro Samurai. This is the 2-volume box set that collects the entire series. This is a great way to collect it. For those of you that don't know, these are still soft covers. These aren't hard covers or anything like that, but you do get kind of typical box set prints, a little bit more bang for your buck here. So definitely a great series, very interesting. My main exposure is the anime with Samuel L. Jackson voicing Afro Samurai. If you don't know, then check it out, find out, because it is a great anime with one of the best openings ever. So nostalgic, but this is the box set, collects both volumes. I want to say both these trades were released separately and then they were released as a package deal in this. And I want to also say there are two box set styles. There's a white one and a black one. I got the black one, but still super awesome. Very excited to have this in the collection. This was outrageously out of print for a very long time, but here it is back into print, adding it into the library. Gonna devour it whenever I have a chance, and I am pumped for that. But let's jump to the next title. Next up is a title that I'm going to have to look at the cover to make sure I don't completely butcher the title's name. It is Tekon Kincrete. Probably still butchering that, probably still not pronouncing that correctly, but it is what it is. But this is Taiyo Matsumoto, which I feel like I just mentioned him during my top 10 releases of January video, because I did. He has a title coming out in the month of January, which is going to be collected in a hardcover. I don't know if it's going to be this trim, which is literally the size of a Marvel Omnibus, but it is a title that you're probably going to keep an eye on, because Taiyo Matsumoto is absolutely incredible when it comes to his creations, his titles, his writing, art, whatever it may be. He is a mangaka that you want to be checking out. I have not read this title. I haven't read all of his bodies of work, but I am excited to finally check this out because I've heard nothing but good things. And it being in this deluxe edition oversized trim makes me even more excited because of how fantastic his art is. I think all of his titles should be released this way, but beggars can't be choosers. But uh, Tekon Nincrete. That wraps up that book. And to wrap up manga, we are ending with where it all began for me as a manga reader, which is none other than Berserk, the Deluxe Edition, Volume 14. This contains the last works of Kentaro Miura on his beloved and incredible title of Berserk. I've said it before on the channel, I'll say it again, this is the best thing that I've ever read in any medium, whether it's manga, comic books, novels, whatever it is. This is the best thing that I've ever absorbed in this hobby. So definitely worth reading. It sucks that this is kind of where Kentaro Miura's tenure kind of ends on the title because he did pass away. But still, absolutely awesome to get the last artwork that he ever really put out. And there is a very touching little tribute to Kentaro during the final chapters of his final volume, and it is so fitting and so beautiful, very touching, but a little bit bittersweet to get this. It is thinner than the rest of volumes, but definitely bittersweet. But that does wrap up manga, so we'll go ahead and jump into the Image and smaller publisher books. First up for the smaller publishers is The Many Deaths of Layla Starr by Ram V. I have not read this. I haven't made it a secret that I'm a little bit newer to the indie or smaller publisher side of comic books. A lot of my reading has been done in Marvel and DC, but I have heard literally nothing but good things. Some people saying this is their read of the year. This was their read of when this was published and when this was put out. So definitely super excited to finally read this and get my opinion on it and form my opinion on it. The main exposure I've had from Ram V was I Am Batman. That's really the main brunt of exposure from him as a writer that I could think of, at least in recent years. But this is, or has nothing to do with superheroes. So I'm very excited to get into it and finally check out this title. Next up is the Telos Saga. This is another title that I have not read. This comes with pretty high recommendations. I've heard nothing but good things, specifically from Omar at Near Mid Condition. This did make it into my top 5 books that I'm the most excited to read in my collection, but I don't know a whole lot about this other than it is a more fantasy style of story. I've heard that it is very touching and heartfelt. It has a very impactful ending, but that's really it. I don't know the details, I don't know the characters, but it is a title that I'm happy to finally get in and have the chance to read. It is illustrated by Mike Roengo, who is no longer with us. He is the artist on My Favorite Fantastic Four run by Mark Waid. He's also the artist on Mark Waid's run of Flash, or a portion of Mark Waid's run on Flash. So I've always enjoyed his art. It is very childlike and kind of Disney-esque in some ways. So I've always been a fan, but it can be an acquired taste for some people and some readers. But definitely excited to get it in. Next up is Moonshine by Brian Azzarello, which is another blind buy. Hashtag holiday spending, because there are going to be a lot of blind buys in this haul. From what I've heard, this is dark fantasy and werewolves meets the mob and mafia and historical stories that have to do with the mob, because I have heard that a lot of characters that are in this title are also historical characters that actually existed and actually were part of the mob. Could be completely wrong there. That's just what I've heard. Um, but I am a sucker for werewolves, vampires, and zombies, as you all know. So this was a book that I was interested in tracking down. I did get a little spend happy this month, if you can't tell by how large this haul is already at this point. And that completely explains why this is even here. I don't know if it's good. I don't know if it's something worth reading, but it is going to be something that I'm going to read. So that is Moonshine, and we can jump to the next book. Another hashtag blind buy, which is Manifest Destiny. I am going to be fully blaming this on Mitch at the OmniBuddy channel. He kind of sold this title on me. This was kind of described to me as a Lewis and Clark retelling, or their story retold with a sci-fi fantasy like twist, some elements that make it much more interesting than it already was. Not that it wasn't interesting already, but just even more interesting. I am very excited to get into this. I haven't read a single page of it. I don't know if it's going to be something I'm going to like or love, but like I've made extremely clear in other hauls, I'm trying to vastly grow my independent side of my library, my independent side of books that I've read. So this was added into the cart, and here we are. It is a beautiful book. If you want a more thorough overview, you can go to Mitch's channel and check out his overview. He does a great job during that video, but definitely pumped to finally check this out. The spine is a little loosey-goosey that I'm noticing now, but just be aware of that. But still, pumped to have it in. Next up is Klaus by Grant Morrison and Dan Mora. This is a beautiful book with some silver embroidering trim, I don't know the proper term for it, on the pages of the book itself. Such a beautiful book. It does come with a ribbon also, for my fans of the ribbon. But this is a somewhat fantastical retelling of Santa Claus and how he came to be and how he came to be as we know him. It is that good. It is a lot of fun. You do have art by Dan Mora, and I think it is definitely something that everybody should read, especially during the holidays. And it was so awesome that this came out around the time of the holidays too, so receiving it was just that much more cooler. But still worth checking out if you're a Grant Morrison fan. And if you're not, Dan Mora's art is always a selling point. He absolutely kills it in this title, so definitely check it out if this sounds like something that would interest you. Next up are two books that I told you guys I would be tracking down. I made a hint to, and that is Power Rangers Year 2, the Deluxe Edition, and Power Rangers Shattered Grid, the Deluxe Edition. These two books were a gift to me from my brother-in-law, so if you're watching, thank you. Um, but I've made it pretty clear at this point that I am going to try and hunt down these deluxe editions. They are beautiful. They are awesome. The series is awesome, especially up to this point. The Shattered Grid event is so cool, such a interesting twist on the character of Tommy Oliver or the Green Ranger. If maybe some of you don't know the name behind the helmet, but definitely some good stuff. Bunkmaster B on his channel, he is a huge fan of Power Rangers. He was one of the selling points on this particular title for me as a reader, and I am so happy that I'm tracking these down. I am pretty sure I've read at least the first deluxe edition and maybe halfway into this, and I want to say even half of what's collected here. I don't think I finished the Shattered Grid storyline. I am a Power Rangers fan, which is why I've read any of this title to begin with, obviously, but still, really, really good stuff from what I have read, and even if it wasn't, these books alone would sell me. They are so beautiful. They all have matching spines here that look like the Power Rangers uniform or suit. So definitely very excited to get these two in and continue my collecting spree of these Power Ranger Deluxe Editions. Next up is Descender, Volumes 1 and 2, and Ascender. I'm going to peel this down so you guys can hear me a little bit better. This is by Jeff Lemire and Dustin Nguyen. Thank you, Bunk, for that pronunciation. I already was excited to read these, collect these. I already knew it was going to be something I liked based off the synopsis. But when I posted my top 5 books that I'm most excited to read video, you all sold me on it even more. So now I am that much more excited to finally read this title. This will be my next read, more than likely. I'm getting through Monsters and Ice Cream Man, the Sunday edition, Volume 2. But as soon as I'm done with those, this will be the next title I jump into. I can guarantee that. And next up is Death or Glory. This is a Rick Remender title. Another thing that I've said multiple times on the channel that I am slowly trying to collect all of Rick Remender's titles, books. I think the last one I need is Gigantic or Gigantic. Probably pronouncing that wrong. One of those has to be right. But I have really, really been enjoying my Rick Remender readathon. I've enjoyed everything that I've read of his so far. A lot of his big two stuff, but I am slowly getting into his independent work. I've read and reviewed Tokyo Ghost and A Righteous Thirst for Vengeance and Scumbag at this point. I have enjoyed my reading experience for all of them, some more than others. Tokyo Ghost was my read of the year of 2023, but I am that much more excited to check out all of his other titles. I've heard nothing but good things about pretty much all of these, some more than others, but pretty much all of them have been received fairly well overall. But very excited to get this in. I love this Rick Remender library edition format, or Remender format, which I'm kind of coining it as at this point, because it's not a library edition, because this isn't a Dark Horse. But anyway, we're getting off topic. This is Death or Glory. I am excited to finally get it in. I kept seeing it at my LCS and decided to finally act on it, so here we are. But there is going to be a common theme that is going to carry over from this book to the next ones, which is that these are also by Rick Remender. I really have to peel these big guys down. This is Black Science, volumes 1 through 3. This is another Rick Remender title that I haven't read, but I am excited to finally read. These are the 10th anniversary new editions, or 10th anniversary reprint. These all have new covers from the original volumes and are completely brand new books from the original volumes, which I am pretty excited about because I've heard that the first original printing had a lot of binding issues, and then they kind of fixed it with the second printing, but not really. But these have been great so far. I've opened them to the middle and made sure that the binding, the sewn binding on it, is well put together and isn't falling apart. None of these have any issues so far, so I'm excited to dive in and read it. Like I said, I am continuing to read Rick Remender's titles, so that completely explains why Death or Glory made it in, and these 3 volumes of Black Science made it into the haul also. But that does wrap up my Image and indie titles, so now we can finally jump into the big 2, starting with Marvel. First up for Marvel, which goes against what I typically pick up for Marvel, and that is Thor for Asgard, the OHC, the oversized hardcover. This is a more mature storyline that follows Thor. There is a lot of violence, a lot of blood, even gore and gruesome scenes throughout this. It has a much more Viking feeling and vibe to the story that's being told, and the action scenes and the story elements that get explored during this particular story. It wasn't one that I was dying to get into the library, but I want to say I got this for like $5, so that's why it ended up finding its way into the library. I guess it was meant to be, but that does wrap up our first book for Marvel. Next up for Marvel is Star Wars Legends: The Empire Volume 2, the Omnibus. That was a mouthful. I'm not collecting all of the Star Wars Legends omnibuses. I'm mainly collecting the Empire, the New Republic, Old Republic, and then I have the Rise of the Sith volume, which I don't recommend really picking up any of the Legends unless you're a huge fan of the Dark Horse era of Star Wars, which is pretty much what these Legends omnibuses are. Definitely some pretty decent stuff during that Dark Horse era. Some pretty decent stuff in this particular omnibus, at least the first half. The second half really depends on you as a reader, but the first half, there are some pretty solid Empire and Darth Vader stories that you want to check out. Volume 1, I do recommend though, some really good Darth Vader stories, but we're not talking about Volume 1, we are talking about Volume 2. But staying on theme of Star Wars Legends, we can jump to the next book, which is another Star Wars Legends omnibus, the New Republic, Volume 1. Mainly picked this up because Volume 2 is coming out, I want to say this month, or maybe February. Can't remember. Dates are very not great when it comes to being in my mind. But Volume 2 has the Dark Empire storyline, and Volume 1 had to be added to the collection. I'm not going to have a lone Volume 2 because I'm crazy. So here we are picking up Volume 1. I still do enjoy a good amount of the material that is collected in this, but that Volume 2 is going to be something that you're going to want to watch out for because that Dark Empire story is very good. And when I say Dark Empire story, I mean there are more than just one issue. I think there's like 3 or 4 parts or something along those lines that tell the entirety of the story, and it reads like a sequel to the original trilogy, or not the original trilogy, episodes 4, 5, and 6. So really good stuff. Highly recommend at least Volume 2, but if you're crazy like me, you can't have just a Volume 2 sitting there. You got to pick up Volume 1, so here we are. Next up is Black Panther by Ta-Nehisi Coates, the Omnibus. This is a highly acclaimed run on Black Panther. I'd probably say equally acclaimed as the Christopher Priest run at this point. It is a more modern run comparatively to the Christopher Priest run. There is a sister series, Agents of Wakanda, that I think is collected in that Wakanda Forever omnibus. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments down below. But I do love Ta-Nehisi Coates' run on Black Panther and his run on Captain America. He is a writer that I am a huge fan of. I've enjoyed a decent amount of titles that he's had a hand in or written, and this is no exception. Definitely worth checking out, especially if you're a Black Panther fan or a Black Panther movie fan, because a lot of inspiration was taken from this particular run. And last but not least for Marvel, we have more Thor. This is Thor by Matt Fraction, the Omnibus. I feel like I just mentioned this book also because I did in my top 10 most anticipated releases of January, because this is the run that immediately follows J. Michael Straczynski and Kieran Gillen's run. So if you are collecting in an omnibus format, you would need the JMS and Gillen omnibus, then this omnibus, in order to collect everything leading up to Jason Aaron's, if you're collecting chronologically. I do enjoy this run. I think it's a highly slept on run when it comes to the character of Thor or Marvel runs in general. So I recommend checking it out. I feel like I might be in the minority there, but nonetheless, it is a title that I'm excited to have in my collection and fill in that gap from the JMS and Gillen and the Jason Aaron. So definitely pumped to finally get this in and fill in that eventual gap that I'll have in the collection. Next up, we have two DC hardcovers. That's why I have them together. We have Human Target Volume 2. This is the final book for Human Target by Tom King. And then we have Dark Knights of Steel Volume 2 by Tom Taylor. Human Target is great. Very good story. I just recently read this. Only had read what was collected in that first volume up to this point. Man, is this good. I loved Dark Knights of Steel Volume 2. Such a twist. Tom Taylor plays with the DC Universe in a Game of Thrones-like setting in such an incredible way. Please read this. It is so good. Tom Taylor is the master of Elseworld stories as far as I'm concerned. Not knocking Human Target. Still really good stuff. One of Tom King's better titles for sure. Definitely worth checking out also. But reading this knocked my socks off. It was so fun. It was so kick-ass and so different. Check it out. If I did read this before I put out my top 10 reads of 2023, this would have made it into it. But I didn't read it until after filming. So, whoops. Here we are. Definitely excited to get it in, though, and continue reading this series. I don't know how much comes after this because I didn't stay up to date, but if you do know, let me know down below. Next up, we have two DC Deluxe editions I'm bunching together because this video is already entirely too long and I am completely fading. This is V for Vendetta by Alan Moore. This is the source material for the movie. If you enjoyed the movie, check out the comic book because it is better in my opinion. There were a lot of creative liberties taken when it pertained to the film, so they are not a one-for-one copy, but this is written by Alan Moore. He's a legend for a reason, so do yourself a favor and get it under your belt. And then we have Mr. Miracle by Tom King, which is usually somewhere in the top 3 titles that Tom King has written. It's one of the titles that made his name as big as it is, and it is an incredible story, very relatable, very dark, and it's worth collecting in an oversized format. Hopefully we get an absolute, or you all get an absolute, since I don't collect them, of this title, because the storytelling aspects that are told through strictly the art are awesome and definitely worth an oversized format. But that does wrap up these two deluxe editions, so let's jump to the next DC book. Next up is Wonder Woman by George Perez, Omnibus Volume 1. I want to say it's 1 out of 3, technically 4. But this is the rebooted Wonder Woman title after Crisis on Infinite Earths. This is to Wonder Woman what Batman Year 1 was to Batman. This is a retelling of her origin, a modernization of her origin, at least for the time period that this was written in. George Perez is an incredible artist, an incredible writer, an incredible creator in general. He is no longer with us, but this is one of his highly acclaimed runs on Wonder Woman. I love the character of Wonder Woman. I want to continue collecting more and more of her omnibuses, and this is one that just has to be in the collection of Wonder Woman omnibuses or runs, whatever it may be, because this is where it kind of all began post-Crisis. So definitely worth checking out. It's not for everyone. It is a little dated, or can be a little bit dated, depending on the reader, but I've always enjoyed it, so here we are. Next up is me finally finishing the No Man's Land Omnibus Trilogy. Road to No Man's Land Volume 1, and now No Man's Land Volume 2. acquired. Check that off the list. This is arguably, it depends on what mood I'm in, one of my favorite Batman eras. It's between the No Man's Land era and the Nightfall era. Those usually are battling for first place. It's not my favorite run. It's not my favorite Batman story, but it is one of my favorite eras of Batman just because of the story elements and what takes place. So I did kind of go over the synopsis when I talked about Road to No Man's Land and No Man's Land Volume 1, but this does follow a Gotham that has been torn to shreds by a massive earthquake and completely isolated off by the rest of the world, and all of Gotham's superheroes or heroes like Batman, Nightwing, the Bat family pretty much, and a lot of Batman's friends are trying to make do with what's left of Gotham and stop Gotham from falling into a extremely dark place. It is awesome. So many cool scenes, so many cool elements, and focus on a lot of cool characters that haven't gotten a lot of focus. Definitely worth reading if you're a Batman fan. Definitely one of those eras that you got to check out. This is the inspiration for The Dark Knight Rises, the third Christian Bale film, and it is that good. I have heard some people not enjoying it, so maybe I'm biased on it just because I've always loved this era. Who knows? But I am happy to finally finish it in the collection. And last but not least, I feel like my throat is about to give out because I've been talking for about an hour and a half at this point. Super Sons, the Super Duper Expanded Edition, the 3 times expanded title or omnibus by DC. Yes, I'm that stupid. Yes, I had a previous printing, and I still upgraded. Lord help my wallet. I mainly got it because of the spine. I don't know. But here we are. Super Sons is one of those incredible titles. This is mainly written by Peter J. Tomasi. You have some incredible artists in here, from Jorge Jimenez to Tyler Kirkham, just to name a few that come to the top of my head. Definitely worth reading. It's one of those titles that is great for new readers, but also pays off in dividends if you are a long-time reader. So definitely do yourself a favor and check it out if it's in this printing or any of the other printings as I hiccup and choke on air. But that does wrap up my DC books, so that does finally wrap up the haul. So thank you so much for watching. Leave some lightning bolt comments down below if you made it to the end of this incredibly long video. I want to see where all of my troopers are that slogged away through me talking aimlessly about all of these books. I love the support. I love each and every one of you guys that tune into these videos. Again, I want to thank you all for watching and being a part of this entire journey and whatever comes down the road when it pertains to YouTube after I get this move under my belt. So I will see you guys when I see you all. I am planning on uploading when I can, so hopefully I will see you guys soon whenever I do have free time and I'm not packing or moving. But if you are watching this and this is your first video, hit the subscribe button to join the Illuminati. Also, if you do me a favor and hit the thumbs up icon, it would mean a lot. And if you do yourself a favor, if you enjoyed this long but awesome video, hopefully awesome video, hit the bell icon. That way you can get notified anytime content is uploaded. But thank you again for watching. I feel exhausted. I appreciate each and every one of you all. And of course, stay nerdy.